Hey everybody, it is Mike with aPlantBasedDiet.org, and I am back with another episode of our live stream question and answer stuff. And as you can probably see from the title today, we're talking about the stroke belt. And many of you guys may or may not know what the stroke belt is. And if you're in the United States, you have a better chance of knowing what it is. And especially if you're in the southeastern United States. And before I go on, let me also mention that we're live streaming on multiple formats, and if you want me to get to your questions and answers, just go to our YouTube channel, which is VeganVideos.info, VeganVideos.info, and you can see it at the end of this title that you're watching. It's right at the end of it. So be sure to go there, say hi, let me know what's going on, because we can talk about anything. But the main subject of this video is talking about basically the stroke belt, or stroke alley as it's sometimes called. So let me get into the basic idea of what it is. And here's a map right here. It shows you the southeastern United States. It's these states in the southeastern United States that kind of form a belt around the Gulf and the Atlantic. And notice Florida is not included in there. It's not. And it's called either stroke belt or stroke alley. And they're saying that it's recognized by public health authorities for having an unusually high incidence of stroke and other forms of cardiovascular disease. All right. Now, if you've been watching this channel or following the work that we do, or anybody in the plant-based or vegan movement, I think you know that there's a lot of consensus right now that animal products and high-fat diets are the likely cause of a lot of cardiovascular disease and potentially stroke. In most people, I think people are starting to realize that. I think What the Health movie kind of brought that to the forefront. But this is something I've known about for a long time. Okay, Garrison Brumbley, I see you out there. Thanks for maybe leaving a comment. He says he's in Clarksville, Tennessee, and you have heard about this. Yeah, so you're in there. Tennessee is in there. It goes up to Kentucky and even parts of, it looks like, I don't know, what is that? I don't know my geography. Is that Indiana or Illinois? I don't even know. I haven't even been there. I need to go to some parts of the Midwest, because I haven't even been there ever. But anyway, okay, you have heard about it. What have you heard about it? Do you have a lot of family members? Sorry, it's still not focusing, right? Let's fix that. Do you have a lot of family members that have suffered strokes, or friends, relatives, whatever that is? Let me know. I'm curious because I've known about the stroke belt for a long time now, probably since, I don't know. I think I heard about it like back in the '80s, and even back in the late '80s and early '90s. I told people about it. A lot of people didn't know, especially people that lived in those areas didn't know. But then when I talked to people and start talking about their neighbors or their health or their friends, people that are living in these states, people that I knew were really in Virginia and Southern Virginia. A lot of those people have had cardiovascular and specifically strokes. So it's a real thing. It definitely is a real thing. And the question that we want to ask is why? Why does it happen? So, like, I did a little bit of searching online, and there's some hypotheses on causation. All right, there's a number of hypotheses. All right, Garrison, you said Tennessee, Kentucky state line. I don't have anyone that has stroke in the past. Oh, okay. Montgomery County, Tennessee. All right. Well, that's good. So it doesn't mean it applies to all people. And, you know, this has been around for a while. And as the population in general moves further and further south, I don't know if this is going to be a thing going forward. I don't know. I mean, because as more and more of the general population moves south, any kind of, population factors, causing factors that are in the population that has lived there for forever and ever are going to be, less and less over time. So let's see what some of the hypotheses on causation. All right, number one, and these are not mine. These are just things that I'm finding online. Okay, I just want to go through them, and I'd like to give my own hypothesis as to what's going on, which is really the same as it's always been for me. Even though my my knowledge of plant-based and vegan lifestyles has changed over time, I think my hypothesis has always been the same. All right, it's been suggested that higher stroke death rates in the stroke belt are due to the region's high African American population. Because African American stroke deaths are higher than the national average, I'm sure that's true. If they're unless they've got some facts that are wrong, Um, and they have some information here that is showing like a county by county of people. This is from the 2000 census, so it is almost 20 years old now. But blue and dark blue are at least 50% or greater areas of counties where the individuals 50% or greater identify themselves as at least part African American. So you can see in the United States, we're not a very integrated country, and there's a high concentration of 50% or higher people designating themselves as African American in the stroke belt. It corresponds almost exactly to the states I showed you earlier. So that's interesting. But you have to dig a little bit deeper in this. I mean, it says here, however, they're also saying because white people, Caucasians, have higher rates of stroke death in the stroke belt than other parts of the country, the higher death rates in the stroke belt cannot be attributed solely to the region's higher proportion of African Americans. Well, let's start with my own hypothesis and my own reasoning here. I think that it's more habits and lifestyle. That's why I mentioned vegan lifestyle, plant-based lifestyle. I think it's just the lifestyle, and whether some area has a high population, high percentage of a certain segment of our background, ethnic background, that has nothing to do with whether people in that area have certain habits that they pass down from generation to generation. And that I think is more of a factor here than anything else, because it kind of sounds like they're saying, well, yeah, there are a high percentage of African Americans in terms of the general population in those areas. That's likely not the reason, and I would tend to agree with that. It's unfortunate that it seems like it's disproportionately affecting African Americans in these areas. That is not good, but I don't think that's the cause of the stroke deaths. Okay, all right, Garrison, you're saying so it is high in concentration in Memphis. Uh, I don't know in terms of Memphis, Tennessee. They're just saying in general, Tennessee is part of the stroke belt. So is Kentucky. So is North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, all the surrounding states pretty much. It's just in that area where the average person in Tennessee has a much higher likelihood of suffering death or debilitation from a stroke than in other parts of the United States. So this is really dealing with just the United States. Okay, next hypothesis. In the early 1990s, it was hypothesized that selenium deficiency in the soils of the coastal plain might be a causative factor, since most of those states are on the coastal plain. So Tennessee and Kentucky are not, that's for sure. The subsequent recognition of high stroke incidence in areas with different soil characteristics led researchers to reject this hypothesis. Yeah, because they're still finding high strokes rates in Tennessee and Kentucky, which don't have that selenium in the soil. So that was rejected. All right. Next one. Some observers have assumed that more stroke belt residents suffer from unrelated hypertension. However, researchers have found that residents of the southern United States are as likely to be aware of hypertension and receiving treatment as residents of other regions. Additionally, researchers who documented the region's elevated incidence of pediatric stroke noted that if the stroke belt is solely caused by regional differences in stroke risk factors, it should not apply to children. All right, so I guess they ruled that one out too. So still don't have any conclusions so far. Next one. It has been suggested that one cause of higher mortality may be predominantly rural character of the region, which increases the distances that patients must travel to obtain emergency medical treatment. Okay, Denise and my wife Denise, talked about this, and that is possible. But the underlying factor, like what's the cause of these strokes? Okay, you know, I don't think it's just like a stroke mysteriously happens to people in the stroke belt, and well, if they can or cannot make it to the hospital, that determines their death rate. I mean, it may, I guess, but we need to go back to why the stroke's happening in the first place. I don't think this has anything to do necessarily with it. And in fact, in 20 years, since they did that census map that I showed you, people keep moving further and further south. The South keeps getting developed. The South is not what it was 20 years ago. Things are not quite as rural, although in certain areas it's very, very rural for sure. And I can see why this might be a factor, but it could be a factor in any rural area. I mean, let's put it this way. You have areas of Montana, right? North Dakota, South Dakota, where it's mostly rural. Oklahoma, they're not suffering from these issues like these people in the stroke belt. So I would totally not put much weight in this at all. Regional differences in standards of medical care have also been suggested as a contributing factor. In one study, researchers found that patients discharged from hospitals in the stroke belt after suffering acute myocardial infarction were also likely to be treated with less likely to be treated with warfarin. I guess it's a drug than patients in other U.S. regions. Okay. I suppose maybe, I don't know, standard of care. I'm not a doctor. Any physicians out there, weigh in on the standard of care and weigh in on if this is changing, because everyone seems to be moving to the south, especially these states that are gaining a lot in population. All right, next one. There's a suggestion that higher stroke incidence in the stroke belt is related to experiences or exposures in childhood. Now, I don't say what experiences or exposures in childhood. I'm guessing it's lifestyle. I guess it's what's handed down to you from your parents in terms of your lifestyle, your level of physical activity, what you eat, those types of things. I think for sure, absolutely, that's probably a factor in here. I think what's keeping me out of focus is the glow of my screen. That's interesting. All right, I'm not going to hold it so close to me. All right, and it's also probably better for my health. It's been another one. It's been proposed that poverty and malnutrition in previous generations, which resulted in poor prenatal nutrition and low birth weights, led to predisposition to cardiovascular disease in adult life. Now, I don't know. Any doctors out there know about this? I don't know about that, but I would discount this one as well. I think that just like so much that we have learned in the plant-based and vegan movements, it's lifestyle related. Lifestyle can be changed. Things can be halted and reversed. Okay, conditions can be in a very short period of time. So you're talking about something happening over a very long period of time in previous generations. I wouldn't put much weight in that. That's my own personal opinion. Now we get into the real meat. Okay, the real meat of this, the vegan meat. Diets high in fried and high-fat foods, such as fried chicken or fried fish, which are prevalent in the region, are thought to contribute to higher risk. Okay, I would say yes. I would say it's almost like and it doesn't mention it in here, but a lot of people have mentioned it, in a lot of these documentaries about this movement, food deserts. I think that there are probably so many food deserts in these areas. Food deserts are usually, I feel like, more brought about or talked about with urban downtown areas. But if you're talking about rural areas, there's food deserts too. Even though they're growing stuff, they're growing crops, but they're probably like monocrops to feed the animals. They're probably livestock. The world's largest hog slaughterhouse is in North Carolina. There's all kinds of huge slaughterhouses. That's a big part of the economy. So that's where they're getting. That's what they're doing in those areas. That's probably what they're eating more of too, unfortunately. All right, last one. The same geographical area also has a higher than national average incidence of lung cancer. I believe that, as it is where much of the tobacco in the United States is grown, and has been at least. I don't know if that's the case anymore. I don't even know how old some of these things are. Smoking is reputed to be the strongest contributing factor to developing both diseases, meaning lung disease and cardiovascular disease. The strongest contributing factor. Now, I don't agree with that necessarily. I don't know where they're getting this from. Actually, I want to click on this. This is from mortality from smoking in developed countries, 1950 to 2000. Okay, that ended in 2000. I think that we know more nowadays. Yes, of course, smoking or being around any kind of smoke. It's not just tobacco smoke, okay? Any kind of constant air pollution, campfires, you name it, is going to cause lung cancer, okay? I think we know that at this point in time. But in terms of the cardiovascular disease, I think that the second from last one is all you need to know about this. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Go to VeganVideos.info. You can type your comments to me right here, right now if you want to, or later if you're watching this not live. But I do believe it's just simply diet and lifestyle related. I think that I'm very concerned that I have read all these different hypotheses that are probably almost all wrong or highly misleading at best. I think that, in the year 2019, when I'm recording this, I would think, like I said, I've known about this since the late 80s, and I've felt the same way. I felt it's diet and lifestyle. I mean, the food, Southern cooking, right, is great. It's delicious, but it's slowly killing you over time. Actually, fairly rapidly, really, because if this is called the stroke belt, it's not just because somebody thinks it's funny. It's truly, there's a much higher incidence of strokes in this area of the United States as compared to other areas of the United States. So the food is what is it, right? That's Dr. Michael Clapper. He's one of our consulting physicians for the aPlantBasedDiet.org nonprofit. That's what he says. It's the food. So is this new information for you guys? I'm just curious. Do you know about the stroke belt? Have you heard about it? I mean, we do so much work in Florida because, according to the map, Florida's not in there. See, Florida is kind of left out of that part of the stroke belt. Uh, I don't know why, but it could be. I think that also in the traditional southern states, like I think that they do have a point there about generations and generations of people just living there, growing up, having families, and because of that, because of the non-transient uh, culture, I'd say, that developed over many years. Like people didn't move, and let me fix this for you again. Like I got the map showing, and now I can't show you me. Okay, people didn't move. People didn't move to the south. This is before air conditioning. Nobody wanted to move to the south. Let's be honest. I think air conditioning totally made the south open up to so many more people that would consider living there nowadays that wouldn't in the past. And of course, the concept of slavery. There's a reason why there's a very high percentage of African Americans still living in that area is because that was like the hub of slavery in the United States. A very very bad thing, and you know some of this may be the result of I don't know just how that progressed. Even though slavery was abolished, this is like the new form of enslavement in a way. Because we started our nonprofit as an educational organization. We make these videos as a way to educate people, but there are still a lot of people, I think, that in general that um, that just don't know about this stuff, and they just kind of follow what goes down from generation to generation, and that's why we're doing this. We want people to learn about what's going on. So I do believe that there's many different reasons as to why the culture and the diet and the lifestyle has been so bad in the South. And another contributing factor, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, due to the lack of air conditioning and nobody moving down south. Well, what kind of culture do you think that develops when it gets really hot, which it does for a lot of the year down in the south? And let's go back in time to like 1940s or whatever, and you didn't have air conditioning. Well, what were you doing? You really weren't doing much. I'll tell you, if anybody out there lives in a hot climate and just decides to go without air conditioning for a couple of weeks or whatever, you'll see what I'm talking about. I mean, most people work indoors nowadays. Even you don't even experience what it's like without air conditioning. But it really drains your energy. You don't want to do anything. And even though the culture has progressed to the point where we've got air conditioning in almost all homes now, there's still those behaviors or those patterns that are handed down from generation to generation. So there's a lot. I think what goes along with this lifestyle is a lot of not enough movement for various reasons and in various things. There's a reason why people say that TV rots your brain. At least they have for years and years. TV's different now, though. TV's not what it was. I mean, you can be watching your mobile device and walking down the street, and people will say it's dangerous actually because you're going to run into somebody. But you can be moving and watching your mobile device. I mean, I guess you always could have set up a TV in front of your treadmill, but really nobody's doing that. You have to have a purposeful movement, and traditional television has zero purposeful movement. You're just sitting there. You're just rotting away in a way, your body. If you don't, you either use it or lose it. If you guys have heard of that. So these are part of the lifestyle factors. And let's get into the diet. Okay, we've done a video. Actually, I think I still need to do a video. What's the healthiest diet for humans? I haven't done that one yet. But let's get into the South, because we're talking about the South. We're talking about the stroke belt. What are these traditional foods? Just like they said, it's fried. There's lots of butter, lard. There's lots of meat, lots of red meat, lots of salt. Okay, these things. I mean, I'm not going to tell you that they don't taste good. I've had them. I've had people who are raised in the South who are really good cooks, and they taste great. And that's got nothing to do with whether it's good for you or not. It's got nothing to do, but it does have everything to do with if it's going to hurt you or not. And the problem is that, just like we hear so much in this movement, that momentary, taste on your taste buds, is it worth years of suffering, ending your life decades early, drawing everybody into your illnesses and having them to put everything aside to take care of you? That's one thing if it's not preventable. But if it's preventable, that's what we're talking about. I think my hypothesis has always been that the stroke belt is a stroke belt because of preventable lifestyle habits that have been transferred down over time, not on purpose. Well, actually, well, maybe on purpose, because anybody who's enjoyed Southern cooking and just I say the general lack of physical activity enjoys it, right? They enjoy that lifestyle. But you have to decide at some point what's more important, because it's not like people just are 100% great, right? And all of a sudden get a stroke and die and it's painless, or get a stroke and I don't know that they're all good for the next 30 years, no problems at all. There's a lot of suffering that leads up to getting a stroke. There's a lot of warning signs. Almost everybody I'd say that probably has ever had a stroke has had all kinds of symptoms leading up where your body's complaining, whether that's high cholesterol, high blood pressure, fatigue, being overweight, all kinds of outward symptoms that something's wrong. And of course, all those things, whenever you have any of those things, you don't feel good. So if you have a whole lot of them together, you're not going to feel good at all, and eventually your body's just going to shut down. Which, in my mind, a stroke is kind of one of those things where the body just kind of gives up. It tells you, it's saying to you, you've abused me for way too long. I'm not taking it anymore, and the only thing your body can do is just quit for good, and that's what it tries to do. When there's a stroke. So, but it's not to say you can't clean it up, because if you follow the right diet, if you follow the right lifestyle, now diet is way more important than exercise, but exercise is still important. Remember, the biggest benefit of exercise, I'd say, is as an antidepressant, because it is definitely the best, most effective antidepressant, way more effective than any pharmaceutical you can take, with absolutely zero negative side effects and all positive side effects. So that is the main reason I say for exercise. Although you still got to move, you really want to have purposeful movement. Live somewhere where you can walk around. And we've talked to, oh yeah, here's another thing. This is another part of the stroke belt. I've talked with Denise, and my wife have been talking. You know, um, you hear from people who live out in the country, and of course, like the stroke belt, more rural, they're saying, right? Because that means further distances from hospitals. So what does it also mean? Oh, clean, fresh country air. I want to live in that clean, fresh country air. I don't want to live in the dirty city. And you know what? That is a correct statement. I don't think anybody wants to live in a dirty city with bad air quality. Okay, I don't want to. I don't even like to spend a lot of time in downtown areas, and maybe it's because of that. But maybe that's going to be changing in the near future, as a lot of downtown areas and very urban countries or counties and things ban the use of internal combustion engines within the high population density areas. So I don't know if you guys have heard about that, but that's a great thing. It's going to clean up the air in the downtown cities, no matter what. But of course, the air outside in the country areas is great. It's fresh. But what's the problem with this? Okay, in theory, it sounds amazing, right? You're just gonna be breathing in fresh country air all the time. But here's the problem. As Americans, we love our cars. So and as humans, we try to do the most efficient thing we possibly can. If you live 30 miles outside of town, there's no way you're going to walk to town. There's no way you're going to ride your bike into town. And even now with Amazon.com and everybody else delivering to you, you may never have to leave the house. Okay? But the problem is, in these country areas, there really aren't any really good places to walk or to hike unless you live right next to a park. Okay? Now some people do, but most country areas are just larger lots. That's what people want. They want more land, more privately owned land, and more long, high-speed public roads. They're not conducive to walking. They're not conducive to running. I see plenty of people walking and running on these roads, but the average person is not going to do that. And they're not going to want to do that. I wouldn't even recommend it. Not on a busy public street or any kind of public street where the cars are going really fast. A lot of these areas in the country have no speed limit. Ever been out to these areas I'm talking about? It says like end 55 speed limit. What does that mean? Well, that means there's no more speed limit. You drive as fast as you want. So it doesn't mean it's safe. It's definitely not safe. And even for bike riders, cyclists, I would never recommend that. I have lots of friends on Facebook that have done bicycling. You see the injuries on a regular and continual basis, deaths on a regular basis. It's not worth riding on the roads. Find some good greenways, rails to trails paths that have very few road crossings. That's what I would recommend. Those are some great areas to bike. But of course, you can't bike at high speeds on those. You'll run over all the pedestrians and the runners. So we're kind of getting off on this, but I would not buy an expensive bike, is what I'm saying. I guess you need an expensive bike if you're riding really fast on a public road. but you don't need an expensive bike if you're riding on the greenways. Okay, it's more enjoyable. You get more of a workout with a heavier bike, bigger fat tires, or whatever you want. That's the best way to go. So the problem is, like I said, the romance and the idea of the clean air in the country is just a myth. Nobody takes advantage of it. And, if anything, it makes people move less. People who move in the country, people who live in country or more rural areas in general get less exercise. That I don't have any stats I can read you the source off of, but I am certain that these exist. And, I've seen this from time and time again. So purposeful walking is a great thing. That's something that's talked about in the Blue Zones. We did a video not too long ago because we are a Blue Zones recognized organization. And one of the tenets of the Blue Zones is that you want some kind of purposeful movement. And that generally means you have to live in an area where you're actually walking to the store to get something that you need to eat or something to buy. If it's not a real purpose there, the chance of you keeping that up is very, very slim. So just keep that in mind. I'm not saying you need to live in a downtown area, although little urban cores or suburban centers are nice. Um, actually, right now I'm very close to Reston Town Center. If you guys know Northern Virginia, Fairfax County, Reston Town Center is kind of like, I would say, like an urban core that's out in the suburbs. You know, you, if as long as I see two people walking outside the window right now down the green trail, which is right outside the window. Okay, so people walk because there's actually a purpose. I've unfortunately had to go to the dentist for probably 4 weeks out of the last 8 weeks or something to do different procedures, which are done now. But I could just walk. It was only like 3 blocks away. Actually, maybe a little bit more than that, but it was less time. You get a situation like that, it's less time to walk, way less money. Of course, if it's raining, you gotta have a big umbrella. I would highly recommend investing in a big golf umbrella. But these are the things you got to do. All these things I'm talking about. Now, somebody in the South might be going, "Oh, that's way too much work. What are you talking about?" Or or the diet. You got to eat mostly whole plants, minimally processed plants, organic plants, low-fat plants, not as many nuts, seeds, and avocados. And somebody eating all these packaged foods from a grocery store, full of salt, sugar, high fat meats, frying all the stuff, putting it in butter, slathering butter, or butter substitutes are just as bad. Okay, butter substitutes are just as bad. This is a Southern way. This is Southern cooking. You ever been to Cracker Barrel? If you've been to Cracker Barrel, you know what I'm talking about. I don't even want to know what the nutritional information on Cracker Barrel food is, although I should probably look it up just to satisfy curiosity. But these are the things you got to do if you want to change your lifestyle. You got to start reading packaging labels. If there's no packaging labels, you got to start looking up nutritional information of stuff that you're eating. There are so many things to this, and folks in the stroke belt, again, this is my hypothesis, there's more people in the stroke belt states that are not doing these things. Okay, and this is the reason why. And this needs to be addressed, and hopefully it's going to be addressed either by people being educated as time goes on. We're trying to play a good part in that, or maybe we have events in those areas, which we're doing. We're definitely doing that. Go to VeganVideos.info, check out our calendar, or maybe more people are going to keep moving to the South. I mean, it's kind of funny actually, because the South has had a lot of good things, a lot of good reasons for people wanting to move there. Lower cost of living historically has been it, although as more people move down, it gets more crowded and the cost of things do go up. That's definitely happening in the South. But it's still warmer in general if you don't like cold weather in winter. And I did a video on seasonal affective disorder. I am definitely a fan of staying into more daylight and warmer temperatures in the cold months. I'm definitely a fan of that. So there's lots of reasons why more people are moving to the South. So maybe it'll change just as more people move. Because just as I showed you that map with counties and percentage of people identifying themselves as African American, that was 19 years ago. I don't know what that is now. I'm sure there have been some changes. I'm kind of curious actually how this is changing. But just because if most other areas of the country have people that don't identify themselves as African American and are moving south, that is going to change the makeup. Although another trend with you guys may notice this is getting off topic again, is that people who are Caucasian like me are going to be more and more of a minority, a true minority. Right now, I think it's still more than 50% of the United States identify themselves as Caucasian, but that is definitely going to change. Caucasians will be in the minority. So what does that mean? Does that mean that this is in the near future, in the next couple of decades, this is going to be the case? At least if all the predictions hold true, and there's many people that are predicting the same thing. Does that mean that the entire country is going to turn to the stroke belt? I don't think so. No, I don't think that's the case. So I think it's lifestyle and habits. So hopefully people will learn the right lifestyles, the right habits, and if you know anybody out there that lives in the stroke belt, has friends and family that get strokes, because I've known these people. I know that some people like that are some of the most resistant folks you'll ever meet in your life. Okay, another part of this video. I guess I might as well say it. That's part of the problem. It's considered like their culture. All the things I've named in terms of the stereotypical Southern this, Southern that. If you're raised in the South for generations, you consider that. You identify with that as your culture. Okay? And if someone attempts to explain to you that this is actually severely damaging to not only your health, but creating a massive burden to those around you, they, in most cases, don't want to hear it. Okay? This cultural thing is almost like, if you ever knew people back in the day who were smokers, tobacco smokers, and they were vehemently defending these, tobacco companies as being like they're victims of people who's out there with propaganda, trying to brainwash everyone that there's something wrong with smoking. We all know there's something wrong with smoking now. But back in the 70s, I think there was a lot of people that resisted. And people will resist cultural changes like this too, because this is a cultural change in my mind. You're talking about lifestyle, you're talking about culture. Just like, how you have the blue zones where they identify, we did a video on this, they identify like the 5 places around the world. California, Loma Linda is one, in the United States. Well, they didn't identify any cities in the South, in the stroke belt. You ever notice that? There's a reason why. I think that we all know, and the blue zones has identified, that this is based on lifestyle and habits. The reason why somebody is happy, healthy, not sick, not suffering is because of their own choices that they make. And if you're not doing well, short of some kind of genetic freak thing or some kind of horrific traumatic accident you've been in, you probably can change it for the better. That's kind of why we're here too. We're trying to get this message out that you can do that. Anybody can do that. So, but the problem is, if it's cultural, if you identify it as your culture, you're going to throw up a wall. Does anybody know people like this? Let me know in the comments. If anybody out there who's doing that right now, go ahead and tag them in this video so they see this video, because people need to know that. First of all, don't think that you know everything. All right, that's part of the problem. I'd say like somebody, it's kind of like love of culture, like love of country, whatever. It's good to a certain point, I suppose. But when you get to the point, when you cross over a line where you've determined already that you've already got everything figured out, and you already know all this stuff, and there's no new information out there, and I don't care what you have to say, that's when we have all this resistance. And this is the kind of the resistance that I've seen in the stroke belt. And yes, I am bringing this all back to the stroke belt. I know none of this was mentioned in what I read online, and maybe things have changed these days. I know that back in the late 80s when I was saying this, it was definitely a problem. Back in the 90s, definitely a problem. Now we're in the age of information. Maybe enough stuff's gotten around so that maybe they've already heard. Maybe the average person in the stroke belt has already heard this, 10 times from different sources. And maybe it just takes one more person to say something like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll look into this. I guess I don't want to feel sick for the rest of my life anymore, And it's hard to say that. That's another thing. It's hard to tell somebody or to accept for someone that you're really just feeling sick, because a lot of people, they get into these patterns and they're so deep and embedded. They think, oh, well, that's just me. That's who I am. This is me, but that's not the case. You can reinvent your health every single day of your life. Like I said, short of some freak genetic thing or short of some highly, highly horrific traumatic accident, short of that, most things are haltable and reversible, and of course preventable. You never get them in the first place if you just pick out this habit. So if you're into any of this stuff, by all means subscribe to our channel. This is the kind of stuff we're talking about. Show that it's fun. You can do all this stuff. Enjoy your life. There's nothing more important than your health. That's the thing. Like, the stroke belt is one side of this equation. It's the really, really bad side that I would never want to have to be stuck in. Although, I'd say that maybe I was for a while. My cholesterol started creeping up. It doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to get stuck in that. But the other side is just like true health, right? There's nothing more important than your health. I don't care what you have or don't have. It's meaningless if you don't have optimal health. And this is something you can work on all the time, anytime. You can learn it. There's always more information. I don't know it all either. We're just presenting what we know as we know it. And of course, we're also doing events. You guys want to go to any of our events? Go to aPlantBasedDiet.info, aPlantBasedDiet.info, and look us up, look our calendar up. We're probably going to be in your area. We are mostly on the East Coast of the United States, and that's why I'm doing this thing about the stroke belt. Maybe we'll do more videos on the stroke belt, because we are getting into the stroke belt and with some of our larger events, and we want to have a positive impact. Not just we just want a positive impact to happen regardless of who does it, because it's much needed. If there's a place called the stroke belt, like I said, there's a reason. I think we know that at this point in time. So anyway, give us a thumbs up if you like this video. If you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, that's at VeganVideos.info. Our calendar is you can do VeganEvents.info. That'll go to our calendar too. So I'm Mike, and thanks so much for watching. Our next big event is in like 11 days now, I think. Actually, 12 days. November 3rd, if you're watching this. Wake Forest Veg Fest. And if you're late watching this, well, maybe check it out for future years. We hope to make it an annual event. And we've already got like 3,000 people that are either yeses or maybes to this event. We want to make it a big community event. You don't have to be plant-based or vegan, but we have lots of great presenters who are going to be at the event. We're showing Code Blue movie, a screening, which is an amazing movie. Look it up if you don't know much about it. Or just go to WakeForestVegFest.org and find out what we're doing with our Veg Fest. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, and glad you're here. Have a great day. Bye.